from Casablanca to Tangier, a 350-kilometer high-speed railway network, which is electric, in 4 years' time. These are good examples that need to be emulated by the rest of the continent. We have Walvis Bay to Gaborone, which is still really at infant stages. The other ones from Huambo to Benguela to Beira is not moving. And then we have what we call the LAPSET in East Africa, which is Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transit Corridor. That will connect the rail line coming from Djibouti through Addis Ababa to the European port of Lamu. But the next phase is supposed to go from Juba through Bangui in Central Africa, through Yaoundé, Cameroon, to the port of Kribi, to create a land bridge that links Indian Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean and opening up the interior of the continent, which is landlocked. That way, countries like Uganda, like Rwanda, DRC, Chad, Niger, and so on can link, and then from Cameroon direct to Lagos, to then connect with one Lagos to Dakar, which passes through several capitals along the west coast of Africa. Then you have got Dakar through Niamey towards the port of Djibouti. These are projects. And then there is the line coming from Cairo through Tunis, Algiers, to Morocco, and so on. These lines need to start moving. And that's the reason why I felt that this opportunity we should take to review the progress which has been so far made, and to see that this COVID pandemic, which we are going through right now, also offers an opportunity for Africa. He said that every crisis has a silver lining. And this gives Africa an opportunity to make use of all Africa's internal resources for Africa's development. That we use Africa's resources which is available. And right now we're talking about Africa Infrastructure Fund development, because we have got a lot of idle capital lying in the continent. The sovereign funds, the retirement benefit funds, the savings funds which are available in several African countries, to say nothing else of money which is available from other friendly countries to the continent. We can make use of this and use African manpower so that we can challenge the African youth, the youth of the African youth who are right now idle. It's a shame that African youth are drowning in the Mediterranean in an attempt to reach Europe, where they hope to get to greener pastures. And they're voting with their feet and their lives. And we're saying that the opportunities can be created on this continent to stem this tide of Africans dying uselessly or in running away from poverty on the continent. We are the youngest continent in terms of demography. Over 70% of Africa's population below the age of 35. This is itself an opportunity. It is a blessing which can be used to the benefit of the continent. And then we are also the richest continent in terms of raw materials. So we need to address the paradox that the richest continent is also the poorest in terms of living conditions of the people. Using African raw materials, adding value to the raw materials that we are exporting right now to industries abroad, and creating jobs right here on the continent. This is what I wanted to share with my colleagues this afternoon. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We are really grateful. The Excellency has already invited us to move beyond rhetoric and to now act by capitalizing on opportunities provided by COVID-19 to ensure that sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and other internal resources are deployed to address the continent's infrastructural deficit. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you, sir. Sir, I want to call on, yes, sir. I want to call on the next speaker. Is our boss, is the Director, Infrastructure and Energy at the African Union Commission. Mr. Sheikh Beda is a think tank, the heart of the system, and I believe it's on the system, on the line. I want to call on Mr. Beda to actually make a remark before we go to the presentation, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon, everybody. I would like to recognize the presence of His Excellency Raila Odinga as a special envoy for development of infrastructure and energy in Africa, and really appreciate his presence today. Is really all of us are very honored to have him here today and to give us guidance on how really to proceed to move forward the issues. We as African Commission, and specifically our department, but also the NEPAD agency. Thank you very much, Excellency, for taking your time, taking your precious time to really give this guidance. Now, if you allow, Excellency, I will give my remarks as it was requested by the moderator. Mesdames et messieurs, c'est pour moi une très grande fierté de participer avec vous au premier webinaire sur le réseau africain intégré de chemin de fer à grande vitesse. Votre présence aujourd'hui sur cette plateforme que je salue témoigne franchement de notre volonté commune de porter notre continent sur le chemin de l'efficience des échanges par la grande vitesse, mais aussi, mesdames et messieurs, ceci témoigne en réalité de la résilience de nos démarches vis-à-vis des chocs comme celui que nous connaissons actuellement. Je veux parler de la pandémie de COVID-19. Ainsi, la présente rencontre porte fondamentalement sur la grande vitesse, qui en outre figure en bonne place dans notre agenda. Vous conviendrez avec moi que la grande vitesse ferroviaire a été une révolution dans la mesure où elle a permis d'appréhender le ferroviaire autrement que comme un simple moyen de transport, et ceci a été expérimenté par les autres, mais malheureusement pas encore par nous. Mais la réalité aujourd'hui est que notre continent est globalement resté en marge de ces développements technologiques. Par voie de conséquence, ne peut jouir des nombreux bénéfices qui en découlent. Toutefois, la bonne nouvelle est que nos leaders en sont conscients, et c'est pourquoi l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine fixe parmi ces 14 projets phares la mise en place d'un réseau africain intégré de chemin de fer à grande vitesse comme seul du projet de transport terrestre. Cette initiative vise à relier les capitales africaines entre elles, ainsi qu'avec les pôles économiques et industriels et les principaux sites touristiques du continent, à l'aide de la technologie appropriée du train à grande vitesse et d'autres technologies complémentaires de l'énergie, ainsi que des technologies de l'information et de la communication TIC. L'objectif déclaré de l'agenda 2063 à cet égard est de faciliter l'intégration économique et physique du continent à l'horizon de 2063. Très tôt, la Commission de l'Union africaine de concert avec AUDANEPAD, notre agence de développement de l'Union africaine, a mis en place un concept pour le projet ainsi qu'un groupe de travail pour sa conduite. En décembre 2019, la Commission de l'Union africaine et AUDANEPAD ont travaillé pour l'adoption d'un plan directeur, mais depuis le début de cette pandémie, tous les secteurs, y compris celui qui nous réunit ce jour, sont pris au piège de la léthargie. C'est pourquoi notre rencontre de ce jour s'avère utile pour, entre autres, premièrement, discuter de la reprise post-pandémique des chemins de fer africains. Deuxièmement, faire un état des lieux des efforts consentis au niveau du continent africain et des mécanismes mis en place par les réseaux ferroviaires africains. Troisièmement, partager les bonnes pratiques à travers l'analyse des cas de certains réseaux africains ou encore ouvrir des discussions sur les scénarios de redressement et les actions à entreprendre pour l'avancement du projet du réseau africain de train à grande vitesse, tout en capitalisant sur les expériences des réseaux des pays disposant déjà de trains à grande vitesse. Et je ne me répéterai pas ici, car son Excellence Raila Odinga a bien cité des exemples de succès. Mesdames et messieurs, je ne sais clore mon propos sans vous encourager à participer activement à ces quelques moments d'échange et souhaiter plein succès à nos assises. And finally, Excellency and dear participants, I would like really to commend our big brother Adam Adine for his work, but also our big brother David Kajangi for his work in moving forward this project. And thank you very much for your kind attention. Je vous en remercie. Merci. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, sir. Director, we're really grateful. I will script in of the house to ask Mr. Napo to briefly go over like a summary of what the director just said in French. Mr. Napo. Mr. Napo, are you online?
Excuse me, but it shows here that English and French interpretation are available. So it's not correct.
Okay. Okay, that's noted, sir. That's noted, sir. Yes, we'll now move on. We've heard and listened to the goodwill message and remarks. We now want to go to the paper presentation. And the first starting point will be to actually have an overview of what this high-speed project is all about. How was it conceived? Where are we now? And to do that, I want to call Mr. Jostam Bucci to actually present an overview of the project. Mr. Bucci, you have the floor. Mr. Bucci, your line is muted.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you. Your Excellency, Honorable Raila Odinga, distinguished guests, I'm Engineer Nyango. The initial technical officers who are tasked with the work of working on the African Integrated High-Speed Railway Network. My presentation is going to be very brief. I'm basically going to give a highlight of an overview of the issues that we have gone through since the commencement of the work. So the background, a bit of it has been covered by His Excellency, Mr. Raila Odinga, so I'm not going to repeat that. I will talk about the roadmap for implementation of the African High-Speed Railway. Then we'll discuss the objectives, achievements, and deliverables of the detailed scoping study, which is the major output that you've had to date, and the current status and the next steps. The background has been covered. So I will talk about the roadmap of the implementation of the high-speed railway, It is to be developed and implemented over a 3 planning horizon, short term, 2015-2025, it's a 10-year medium term, 2025 to 2045, and a long-term period up to 2065. In 2015, the IU set up a project team to guide the execution of the initial project preparation. And we are to cover 4 major areas: technology, finance, legal institutional framework, training, technical and research for people to be able to operate in the system. We are also to develop a project implementation framework. Our preliminary anchor railway corridors were identified, comprising of 4 longitudinals, that is from north to south, and 6 latitudinals going from east to west. Initially, the study was set up under AUC and was being supervised by AUC. Subsequently, in 2016, the implementing was transferred to IU NEPAD. The assignment undertaken is to be developed in 2 stages. Phase 1, which we have just completed, comprised of a detailed scoping study, and phase 2 will be a feasibility or a feasibility study targeting the particular links or corridors that are to be implemented. We completed the preparation of the terms of reference in 2018, and the CPCS, in association with ARACON and IELF Consulting Engineers, won and undertook the study. The final report and master plan was submitted in February early this year. The key components of the detailed scoping study comprise of 2 components. First was study analysis and master planning component. This covered the business, the market demand analysis, and routing. Routing was critical because we got to identify which routes are most applicable and suitable and will serve the objectives of the AAU. It also covered the technical issues on equipment and infrastructure, technology options, transnational operational issues for interoperability, and also propose a framework of technical and operational standards for infrastructure and equipment to be adapted uniformly through a continent so that you can allow for interoperability. This component also covered the high-level environmental and social impact analysis, the benefits, mitigation, and the sustainability of the proposed system. It also looked at legal and institutional framework and infrastructure and transport service delivery options. That is, how this infrastructure would be delivered from implementation to operational. How will it be run? How will it be operated? The study also proposed suitable financing options, mechanism, strategies, and maybe identify funding sources initially, and also develop an African continent railway master plan, which could be implemented over the planned period up to 2043. The scope of the study that was initially identified under the 4x6 longitudinals and longitudinal covered about 71,000 kilometers of railway network, and involved about 75 links when it was broken into pieces to enable easy implementation and analysis. And they were aimed to connect national capitals, industrial centers, ports, and economic centers. The second component of this was project preparation and implementation. Having done the master study, how do we propose to prepare specific projects and how would they be implemented? In this, the task was to develop implementation roadmap based on an approved rational prioritization framework or criteria for priority projects, those ones to be undertaken within the medium term to 2013, in line with AUC directive. The consultant was also required to identify 12 pilot projects, of which 2 should be accelerated. And in the CPS's report, they have identified a total of 16,270 kilometers of railway routes, or 22% of the total network for implementation by 2013. The consultant was also to undertake a detailed scoping, TUR, and draft concession cooperation agreement for the 2 accelerated projects that will have been identified. In this regard, the two projects that were identified for acceleration were Link 3536, that is in Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa, coming from Walvis Bay, Windhoek to Gaborone, 1,295 kilometers, and Links 34 and 72 in Eastern Africa, coming from Dar es Salaam, Bujumbura, Kigali, and Kampala. This covers about 2,072 kilometers. Another requirement was to develop national readiness strategies and national readiness plan to guide the implementation based on 4 parameters: legal and regulatory framework, institutional capacity developed in the various countries, including the training, financial capacity of the countries to support or to implement or to fund or to indeed put in the necessary environment to attract capital, whether it is through international finance institution or PPP, and fourthly, political engagement, so that they get the acceptance of this at the highest levels, from the African Union Commission up to the national government. These criteria were to signal country regional readiness to implement a project, so that it is not started before all these criteria are in place. And lastly, to develop a promotional video to help us market these projects. The current status and the next steps. The video, the high-speed railway video, was launched in Korea in November during the PIDA week. Workshop has been held in March 2020 with Windhoek, Namibia, to validate the draft national readiness strategy. At that workshop, they recommended that consideration be given to extending the Walvis-Gaborone route under the accelerated program by a further 348 kilometers to include Link 37, that is Gaborone to Pretoria to Joburg. They also proposed that the financing strategy to include PP options, public investment, and blending by multilateral donors. NEPAD has also commissioned an advocacy strategy document, and NEPAD to initiate resource mobilization to implement a 3-year time-bound action plan, 2020 to 2022, in order to implement the circulated pilot projects. Recommendations adapted from this first webinar will also be progressed to the next steps. Your Excellency, the moderator, thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Justice. We've now understand what this project is about, especially for participants. We know the space where we're coming from, what has been done so far, and what is being done. The next speaker is our minister from Ghana. Because of the mix-up in the naming, I don't know if the honorable minister is on the floor. I want to urge him, this is his time to speak. Honorable Ghartey is the former Attorney General in Ghana, member in the parliament since 2005, and a man that has transformed the face of railway in Ghana. Honorable Ghartey, you have the floor. It's like we don't have the honorable minister here. He was supposed to be in the campaign here and there. Let's go to the next speaker. Is the head Presidential Infrastructure Championing Initiative, the Presidency of South Africa, Mr. Hanif Ibrahim, is to deliver a remark. What is happening in South Africa and what is the message from the Presidency of South Africa? Mr. Ibrahim.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Mr. Olawale Rashid. Excellency, Mr. Raila Odinga, it's a great pleasure to see you again. And to everyone else, respected guests, thank you very much. I'm going to make a quick few remarks, just covering comments. First of all, just to thank the NEPAD agency and the stakeholders for organizing this important discussion. But I want to pause for a moment and to say that we are living through extraordinary times. In particular, for us in South Africa, the pandemic has touched all of us. And of course, it has done so too in Africa, and more particularly in South Africa. As of yesterday, we've had in the amount of 7,257 deaths and 459,000 positive cases. And we are not by any measure near our peak, nor are we out of the woods in relation to the COVID crisis. Similarly, for the World Health Organization last night announced that Africa is also edging closer to about 1 million infections with about 18,000 deaths. I make this point to underline the fact that it has been exceedingly difficult in the last few months to really focus on anything else other than the pandemic. Now, the topic we address is about taking the African Integrated High-Speed Railway project to the next level. And let me be clear. South Africa fully supports and endorses the ongoing and superb efforts of the NEPAD agency, together with member states and our Pan-African partners, the African Union Commission, the African Union, the UNECA, and of course the African Development Bank, as well as the private sector, with regard to ensuring that we deliver on taking the African High-Speed Railway project to the next level. The basic conceptual thinking, and His Excellency Mr. Odinga made reference to this, is about rail connecting African capitals. And the example given is, of course, the Al Burak high-speed train, which links the cities of Tangiers to Casablanca in Morocco, and which is fully operational. As South Africa, we continue to work closely and indeed remain committed to the processes of ensuring the successful execution of the project linking Namibia, Botswana, and South Africa. There has been good progress, and the speaker who did the presentation made reference to the meeting in March 2020 in Namibia. I was, of course, there. And so I can attest to the progress that was reported there. And of course, again, as His Excellency reported, that the project is one of the AU Agenda 2063 flagship projects, and we of course underscored its critical import and for it to advance. The next point I wanted to get to is the issue about South Africa chairing the African Union for 2020, and of course, Program Director Mr. Rashid, you made reference to the Presidential Infrastructure Champion Initiative, and in that regard, His Excellency Mr. Raila Odinga honored and graced us with his presence, and so did the director, my brother and good friend, Sheikh Beda. And at that luncheon, we reported on a segment of the network, and that was the Trans-Kalahari Railway Project, which Namibia, who is a member state of the PIKI, the Presidential Infrastructure Champion Initiative. And indeed, we had good as reported. I just wanted to raise the issue of South Africa was previously appointed by the African Union as the manufacturing hub for rail stock for the African continent. We remain committed to deliver on this resolution and of course stand ready to assist. We have, as South Africa, involved our SOEs, which is Transnet, and of course our DFI, the Development Finance Institution, the DBSA, to pioneer the work in that regard. I want to, of course, His Excellency made reference to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And of course, the objective of what we do must revolve around increasing the intra-Africa trade from the current levels of around 12 to 15% and to a much higher level. Colleagues, I want to make the point that we should be anticipating turbulence and difficult days ahead in our efforts. In my view, in our humble view, South Africa will not be spared the crisis. We've already seen estimates by the IMF giving us a minus 3.2% GDP growth for Africa. And of course, the World Bank estimating between minus 2.1% and minus 5.1%. Of course, we know our needs are in the region of 130 billion a year, and with a finance gap of about 68 to 108 billion US dollars. The point I want to make is the COVID-19 pandemic is expected to significantly widen our deficits across the continent and make infrastructure financing even harder to come by. And of course, this pandemic will set large-scale development projects back a few steps in the short to medium term. In fact, my view is, in some instances, construction will probably be halted because of in the wake of the lockdowns. And so some of the developments I've been watching is, for example, what's happening in Kenya with the SGR, in Ethiopia with the Addis Ababa Djibouti Railway, and of course, my brother Olawale Rashid, you will be able to confirm that we even have difficulties with the Nigeria railway link, the 1.5 billion link, and of course in Senegal we have the same problem, or similar problems with Jamena from Dakar, Jamena, Djibouti. So the point I want to make is that given the unpredictable nature of the pandemic, a return to normal is highly unlikely. And so I think in South Africa, we realize that this will be part of our challenges. And I just wanted to table that so that we do not proceed on the notion that it is life as normal. I'm just cutting my comments short, but of course I'm free to discuss. So I would like to thank and express my gratitude and thank everyone involved in this webinar and wish you success. And also, we as South Africa, as you know, are standing ready to support and participate in everything and in the next steps. I thank you very much, and I thank you, Excellencies.
Thank you very much for that presentation. You have touched an area that I expect the speakers will also touch later. The question of turbulence and the fallout of the COVID-19, the impact of the economy. You have mentioned that there are progress, but there are challenges. And challenges in terms of funding and financing is going to be an issue. It's already becoming an issue. But luckily for us in this presentation, His Excellency Raila Odinga mentioned something that we should look inward, look into our sovereign wealth fund that align value, our pension fund, and some others. We also have a paper that is coming that we also talk about what are the way forward, options and paths to actually accelerate the high-speed rail. So, Mr. Ibrahim, thank you very much for this. COVID is a crisis, it's an ongoing crisis. It's very challenging, not just to human beings, but even to the economy, and it's likely to affect the state of infrastructure. Thank you very much. These are limited. The next speaker, we have to shift the goalpost a bit. We'll go to Mr. Ahmed, Saïd Mohamed, CEO.
Bonjour à vous tous.
CEO.
Je suis très heureux et très honoré d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. Je profite de ma présence parmi vous pour souhaiter à vous tous la bienvenue. Je tiens tout d'abord à remercier Naouda pour son initiative et l'organisation de cette téléconférence consacrée au projet africain de train à grande vitesse, à travers laquelle la CFT, en sa qualité de réseau ferroviaire africain et président de l'Union africaine des chemins de fer, suivra la réalisation du programme de développement des infrastructures en Afrique, PIDA, inscrit dans l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine. Permettez-moi de saisir cette occasion pour vous informer que l'UAC étant une institution spécialisée de l'UA, l'Union africaine, une plateforme pour la réalisation des projets ferroviaires en Afrique, traverse une situation critique depuis quelques années. En effet, ces activités sont à l'arrêt, notamment suite à la vacance du poste de son secrétaire général. Plusieurs tentatives ont été menées par la SNCFT avec l'appui de la Commission de l'Union africaine et le soutien de l'AUDA-NEPAD pour remédier à cette situation. À cet effet, une feuille de route comprenant les principales mesures d'urgence a été adoptée afin de relancer d'une manière efficace cette institution. La première action engagée par la présidence de l'Union africaine avec le soutien de la Commission de l'Union africaine est celle de la désignation d'un bureau d'audit qui sera chargé d'effectuer le bilan général de l'institution et proposer les voies de sa revitalisation. Par ailleurs, au mois de novembre 2019, la SNCFT a sollicité par lettre officielle les ministères du Transport du Congo et de la RDC pays hôte du siège et de l'école de formation de l'Union africaine, ainsi que les réseaux ferroviaires membres de l'UAC, pour les informer des décisions et des démarches à prendre et demander leur soutien pour restaurer la crédibilité et l'efficacité de l'Union africaine des chemins de fer. Finalement, je saisis cette occasion pour saluer les efforts consentis par le département infrastructure à la Commission de l'Union africaine, de l'AUDA-NEPAD, ainsi que les efforts de toutes les parties prenantes qui œuvrent pour le développement de notre cher continent. Merci encore une fois. Madame Maha fera la présentation à ma place.
Bonjour à tous. Donc, je me présente tout d'abord. Je suis Mehe Boussili, ingénieur chef projet au département de l'infrastructure. Donc, je vais présenter la SNCFT en quelques chiffres. Pour la SNCFT, on est 4644 agents. Donc, notre réseau ferroviaire, il est de 2150 km, 1680 km voies métriques et 461 km voies normales et 9 km double écartement. Donc, 90 km électrifiés, 1777 km exploités et 373 km non exploités. S'il vous plaît, faites passer les diapos, s'il vous plaît. Next. Diapo 6 et 7. Les diapos 6 et 7, s'il vous plaît. Les diapos 6 et 7, s'il vous plaît. OK. Donc, je vais maintenant présenter notre projet ou bien étude de faisabilité de la réhabilitation et de la modernisation de la ligne de chemin de fer transmaghrébine. Juste une petite conclusion sur cette étude. Les objectifs de l'Union du Maghreb arabe, UMA, en cohérence avec la préconisation du Comité des transports ferroviaires maghrébins, CTFM, sont de rétablir la liaison ferroviaire directe entre le Maroc, l'Algérie et la Tunisie et d'améliorer le temps total de trajet entre Casablanca, Alger et Tunis, qui est actuellement de 48 heures pour un total de 2350 km. Les phases préconisées par ce programme sont les suivantes. La première étape, c'est de ramener la durée de trajet Casablanca, Alger, Tunis à 30 heures. Et la deuxième étape, c'est réduire ce temps de parcours à 25 heures en modernisant les infrastructures existantes et utilisant du nouveau matériel roulant. La troisième étape et la quatrième étape, qui sont de développer le TGVM entre Casablanca, Alger et Tunis, et de prolonger cet axe ferroviaire à grande vitesse d'une part vers le sud jusqu'à Nouakchott et Mauritanie et d'autre part vers l'est jusqu'à la frontière entre la Libye et l'Égypte ne sont pas prises en compte dans le cadre de l'étude actuelle. Donc cette étude, elle était faite sur 3 variantes différentes, surtout sur la liaison entre l'Algérie et la Tunisie. Une étude de trafic et une étude technique de tracé et surtout d'exploitation ont été analysées en fait par des études et matrices multicritères AMC, ont préconisé la variante numéro 2 qui est la liaison à travers Tarf Jandouba. Donc cette liaison, elle est pour la deuxième partie de l'étude. C'est de ramener le tracé ou bien c'est de ramener le temps de parcours à 25 heures. Donc, les résultats de l'étude, la seule solution pour réduire le temps de parcours à 30 heures, tout d'abord, c'est la première étape, est d'utiliser l'infrastructure ferroviaire existante avec des interventions sur cette infrastructure et avec des technologies minimales. La rectification et l'amélioration de l'alignement de la voie existante avec des paramètres de conception et modernisation des installations de signalisation sur le tronçon Fès-Oujda, le tronçon transfrontalier Oujda-Akidabès, le tronçon Soukahras-Ghardimao, le tronçon Ghardimao-Jandouba et le tronçon Jandouba-Beja et finalement le tronçon Beja-Jdeïda. Donc, le temps de parcours qui est initialement ou bien maintenant de 48 heures va être minimisé vers la première partie donc, pour 30 heures et après, il va être minimisé à 25 heures. Donc, les paramètres de l'infrastructure ferroviaire, c'est la partie la plus importante, c'est l'interopérabilité qui est la caractéristique technique pivot de cette étude de faisabilité. Ayant pris en référence les normes européennes en vigueur sur ce sujet, donc les bureaux d'études, ils ont collecté par des fiches toutes les informations qu'on considère qualifiantes pour définir le niveau des paramètres normatifs et de performance. Donc, cette étude et à la conclusion, elle a mené à des résultats principaux qu'on peut donc déduire, ainsi que les décisions qui restent toujours à prendre, bien sûr, par convention avec les différents États et tout ça. Par rapport à la première partie, la seule alternative permettant de déduire la durée du parcours à 30 heures, dans un délai bien sûr raisonnable 2020-2025, avec un investissement réduit à réaliser et de faire la liaison sur le réseau ferroviaire existant. La deuxième étape, afin de réduire ce temps de parcours à 25 heures, en utilisant bien sûr de nouveaux matériels roulants, l'itinéraire le plus convenable est celui correspondant au scénario 2, 2050-2065, qui est Tarf Jandouba. Par rapport à la troisième étape, oui. Oui, d'accord. D'accord. C'est pour l'axe nord. Pour la partie sud de la Tunisie, on est en train de faire l'étude de Tunis, plutôt Gabès Medine, qui est le premier noyau de la liaison entre la Tunisie et la Libye. Et la Libye. Et ces deux projets, ils figurent dans la liste des projets prioritaires. Oui. Pour le PIDAP Abdo. Merci pour votre attention, je cède la parole à ma collègue pour présenter les dispositifs donc, faits de la pandémie.
I'm sorry, Tunisia has exhausted his time. You really enter into other people's schedule. We give you 1 minute to actually round up. 1 minute.
Okay. First of all, on behalf of SNCFT, allow me to extend a warm welcome to all of you. So, as you are all aware, the infectious disease caused by the recently discovered coronavirus is an ongoing global pandemic. And next slide, please. And as you see, fortunately, Tunisia is ranked among the 7 best post-COVID-19 destinations, thanks to its positive record in the fight against this pandemic. Until 25 of July 2020, statistics showed that 90,107.25 tested cases, 1,455 confirmed cases, 1,157 healed persons, and 50 of deaths. Next, please. This is how the situation has progressed from the first
I'm sorry. Hello, madam. Hello, I think the time is up. We have to give room for other. We have so many other papers for presentation. Please, let's stop it here so that we can call other presenters. Is that okay? I hope that is okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes. So we've observed something. We've not been gender sensitive enough. We've been having so many presenters, but it's now time to have a paper presenter who is an industry activist, the executive secretary of South African Railroad Association. SAA is an association of railway companies and operators and stakeholders in South Africa. I want to call on Ms. Mesela Lapu to present her paper. We should be gender sensitive.
Good afternoon. My name is Mesela Nhlapo. I am the CEO of the Railroad Association. I'd like to thank NEPAD for giving us an opportunity to present a view or a case for private sector participation in the development of railways on the continent. Who we are a platform that brings relevant rail industry stakeholders together. The Rail Association represents companies that are original equipment manufacturers, manufacturers of rail components, rail operators, including companies that are in the services sector. What we stand for is the revitalization. Am I visible? Okay, perfect. So as an industry body, we stand for the revitalization of the railway sector. We we want to see transformation, a complete transformation of the sector. We advocate for specific policies that will grow the railway sector to achieve some of the deliverables that we aim for in terms of Agenda 2063. The opportunity to position rail as an enabler of real economic growth in our country and the continent is right here, right now. How do we go about achieving these objectives? We can achieve these objectives through collaboration, the standardization, sustainability, partnerships, which will then result in investment. The collaboration that we're talking to is how do we collaborate with different states on the continent to promote open access, to promote private sector participation in terms of being operators in their respective African states. By creating an integrated platform that brings together public and private role players to ensure alignment is going to be key in achieving the objectives that we have set out for ourselves as different states on the continent. The viability of the CFTA largely depends on an integrated Africa, but also the ability for us to transport all goods that we would have produced in our different countries or regions. The standards that we are advocating for is the standards that are applicable to Africa. I have learned on the last presentation that we are looking at European standards. We have the view that for African problems, we must create African standards to ensure that African private sector, small, medium enterprises, companies are not disadvantaged by these European standards or standards from anywhere else in the world. Supply development is going to be key, as His Excellency has alluded earlier, that we have a huge high unemployment within our youth. How do we resolve that issue? It is through these big projects that supply development needs to take place. We can no longer rely on being employed, but the youth of Africa wants to be self-employed. Fair commercial terms are going to be important in the development of our continent, meaning that as a private sector, an African private sector, we need to benefit from the continent and the project that has been highlighted by the African Union and NEPAD. Sustainability is what would sustain the continent. So as a railway sector can only be sustainable under these conditions, there must be local manufacturing. Local manufacturing will ensure that we at least respond to the aspiration number 1 of the African Union Agenda 2063. Creating new opportunities for entrants, particularly women and youth. Inclusive growth. We cannot grow as a continent and leave others behind. So we need to work together to ensure that we grow together and we build this continent again. Effective policies and regulation and legislation. We need to have regulations that are in the best interest of Africans. Anything that is not in the best interest of Africans cannot grow this economy, cannot grow the economy of our continent. There needs to be a continued training and development. We can only achieve the growth that we need through continuous training and development of our youth and women. There's an African saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So as private sector, we're reaching out our hand to government and various governments that we want this partnership. We want to work with you. We want to be part of the solution. So we're therefore appealing to African Union and all its partners that private sector participation at all levels of infrastructure development is a necessity. Investment, rail as an enabler for economic growth. As an industry body, we will seek for all innovative mechanisms and advocate for policies that will unlock in innovative and growth potential of the sector in the continent. All investment and funding decisions must support the aspiration of number 6, which says Africa, whose development should be driven and rely on the potential of Africans. Now, this is where the standards come in. The standard has to be dictated by Africans, not standards that would be applicable in Europe, in America, in Britain, or in China for that matter. We need to have African solution for African challenges. Now, as a role of the private sector, we understand that we are an enabler, or we can work with government to develop, to bring about economic development. So private sector, we provide, say, 90% of employment, but the power that we have as private sector is largely dependent on governments to create an enabling environment for private sector to work together with government. The old ways of private sector and government talking past each other has to come to an end. We need to talk to each other to find a common goal for the best interest of the continent. Now, the Africa that I want for my children, the Africa that I want for my brothers and sisters on the continent, it should be a prosperous one that based on inclusive growth and is sustainable to the development of the continent. The integrated continent that is politically united based on Pan-Africanism. You would have picked up already that I am pro-Africa and anything else comes afterwards. So if we can't find solutions as Africans, no one else will find solutions for us. Now, aspiration number 6 says an Africa whose development is people-driven. With all our projects, let's benefit Africans first, and particularly your women and youth. Goal number 20, it says, Africa must take full responsibility for financing her development. The right strategies to finance its own development and reducing aid dependency. It is the aid and the loans that end up creating us as, or finding ourselves as African and African states in a stranglehold relationship. Yes, we would have money from these countries that have enough money to invest on the continent, but is it in the best interest of Africa? Do our youth get employed through this project? What is it that we want for our youth? And as private sector, we're saying that we are here, we are ready, we will employ. My expectations as somebody from private sector, when I come into a platform like this, I have expectations, and I'm not shy about saying what is it that I expect from this platform. I expect and humbly request that this platform officially invites our association to partner with the rail infrastructure development team. We humbly request that the NEPAD officially support the ratification of the Luxembourg Rail Protocol to the Cape Town Convention. These are instruments that are available to our governments as lawmakers. It does not cost my government anything to ratify the protocol, but it allows for different funding opportunities that will be available to us as Africans, and not to be in a, a stranglehold relationship with certain countries. We seek to NEPA to officially support the increase of African content on African projects. The only way that we can eradicate poverty is through manufacturing, is through creating employment, and then therefore your African child will benefit. African private sector must be part of the decision making as per Agenda 2063. So in order for us as public sector, as private sector, as Africans, as my brothers and sisters on the continent, to achieve the ideals of Agenda 2063, it largely relies on partnership. I thank you.
Yeah, let's go on, Mesela. Wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's our comrade Mesela from South Africa. And you can see from the tone of the presentation, the down-to-heart presentation, the need to integrate the private sector, the need to have Africanization of the need to create African standards instead of simply, because actually we've been talking about European standard, American standard, Chinese standard, especially the railway sector. It's challenging us to think of creating African standard. And there is a direct challenge to Nepal. There is need for official collaboration with the continental private sector group. That is the way to create jobs and to reduce poverty. Thank you very much. I want to call on the next presenter, Mr. Njenje, if he's on the line. Please, you have the floor. Mr. Njenje.
Who are you talking? Who are you calling?
Yes, Jean-Pierre, you have the floor.
Oh, okay, it's my turn. Thank you. Well, Excellency and dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you first for this invitation to join your panel today. And this gives me the pleasure to, even virtually, meet some of my long friends. So I'm rather happy now to share some of my international railway experience. We are talking here on a project of developing high speed across the continent of Africa. Through my experience, I can say that wherever high speed has been developed, it has always been an enabler or a driver of social and economic growth. But high speed is rather elaborate technology and cannot be considered in isolation. It has to be put back in the context of the existing railway networks to create an even bigger network. This is why I propose to you two presentations. First is Rail in Africa, which is a 2040, this is the other one, 2040 vision, which was developed by UIC Africa and which will be updated for the 2063 vision to come. We have to realize that rail in Africa, the rail network in Africa, is about 90,000 kilometers. It's less than 10% of the whole world network, but it only represents 1% of the passenger or the freight traffic worldwide. And this traffic has been in stagnation for a number of years, although the demand is really growing and expected, if you go through the OECD statistics and forecast, to be multiplied by 4 for passenger traffic and by 7 for freight demand. This is why, more than ever, and to go along with what was said before, there is a need to grow this network through regional integration, through interoperable railway development and modernization of these railways, to improve its capacity with better signaling, better infrastructure, and proven and tested solutions which will be adapted to the African context, and a better service-oriented organization. The benefits are really high. You know, in terms of safety, the number of casualties can be reduced by 25,000 every year. The number of external benefits can be estimated to $3 billion every year, and the environment can be highly protected. So this is why bringing now the idea of high speed, dragging to the ceiling higher and higher the concept of railway through innovation is very, very important. But at the same time, it has to be considered that high speed is not just a fast train on a dedicated track. High speed is really to be considered as a system. And this system requires the state-of-the-art, the best expertise in the fields of infrastructure, rolling stock, signaling systems, development of railway stations, urban integration, maintenance systems, training. So this is really something that needs to be considered as a whole approach. Even if high speed is not a unique system, there is many ways to organize it, and the experience of many other countries in the world can help. One thing to remember is the energy efficiency comparison, which can be put in the equation of the financial balance of the investment. If you consider in terms of volume what can be driven by and transported by high-speed trains, and at the same time you have to remember that the development of high-speed lines linked to the network will also bring back capacity to the existing network for freight corridors. So this is quite interesting. Also interesting in the next slide to see what is the burden for society to be in comparison with other modes, and also in taking into account the external factors for society, which give a highly good advantage for rail. So we are here with a concept of a system which brings competition, which brings capacity, which brings intermodality, linking to the existing networks which need to be renovated and upgraded, which also brings an integration of the society, which actually is very much needed in the African patchwork. Of course, the high-speed network in the world is growing and growing. It will reach probably 50,000 kilometers by 2063, certainly. You can see that twice the population of the Earth has been carried at the moment by existing high-speed trains.
Kindly fast-track the presentation. Kindly fast-track it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And so many projects are being considered. Of course, the experience of Morocco in Africa as the first high-speed link is interesting. And it is very highly interesting to see that after this first link, they want to extend it. So it proves that the benefits is not only on the paper, but also in the practice. So something which needs also to be considered, my last words for this very short presentation, is beyond the fact that it is a system, it has to be considered as the provider of a new service of mobility for the continent. And this is what I often mentioned in my speeches and conferences as former CEO of the UIC, is that we are here considering a project for the future, which should be called SISICOM. SISICOM for Sustainable, Integrated, Connected, International Chain of Mobility. And this is the last slide that will conclude my very short presentation. You have them for you to go through, and I will continue to discuss it anytime. Thank you very much for your kind.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate you have given the technical background, and we have the paper. We'll share it with participants. I want to call on the next speaker. We are running against time, but we have to run through the list. And this one is very important. It's Mr. Rowland Ataguba, Principal Consultant, MD, Bethlehem Rail Infrastructure Limited, UK. Mr. Rowland, please, you have the floor. Let's have your paper, which is on options and conditions for fast-tracking the implementation of the high-speed rail project.
Thank you, moderator. The subject of my presentation is options and conditions for fast-tracking the African high-speed rail projects. My name is Rowland Ataguba. I am CEO at Bethlehem Rail. I was going to give you a quick background, but given the exigencies of time, I thought it was best we skip any small talk and go straight to the meat of the matter. What are the issues? Let me talk about the strategic first. What is clear is the AUDA-NEPAD agenda doesn't appear to be well domesticated, if at all, by the states, as it is not overtly referenced as a consideration when national governments have prosecuted their railway projects to date. And we've had a few that have been on. The Lagos Declaration, as we've heard, was in 2013, and that's 7 years ago. So far, the only tangible deliverable that we have to hold is the detailed scoping study incorporating an implementation plan for pilot projects. Ordinarily, I would think you could cover that ground in 2 to 3 years, but it's 7 years gone. So I would say we're probably adrift by 4 to 5 years. What about strategy? These must necessarily flow from the objectives, which we have defined in quantitative terms only. The assumption, of course, being that if you construct infrastructure that links the landlocked countries, connects the regions, the political and economic capitals, and creates transport beltways, the north-south and east-west beltways, as we've heard, that somehow we can then go to sleep. A notion which, of course, must be fallacious, because is it some 5 to 10 years after the once gleaming infrastructure has lost its luster and has fallen into disrepair, perhaps due to poor maintenance, that we start to wonder if these projects had been worthwhile in the first place? By which time, of course, most of us may not even be around, because we're talking about a time horizon of about 30, 50 years. Don't we need secondary objectives of qualitative and quantitative metrics that enable us to monitor and evaluate our achievement? This may be an assessment of traffic throughput or growth along a particular channel or GDP growth and so on, but some things that enable us assess and manage the benefits of the program as they flow. How about coordination? How much of it is going on at the top to monitor and control overall achievement? Are we also playing to our strengths when we engage the world? When we go to FOCAC, to Sochi, and so on, do we go as a continent or as individual states competing for attention and resources? Are we not being set off against one another and our hand weakened in the negotiations as a result? Are we not stronger together? At the administrative level, are we being effective in delivery? Is time really of the essence to us? Take Nigeria, for example. In 2006, a contract was awarded for a double-track Lagos-Kano standard gauge rail line, which is a part of the Algiers to Abuja to Lagos lines. It was to be delivered in 4 years, but 14 years on, it's only about 20% complete. It was not about lack of money, but more about prioritization and political exigencies. Take another project, Lagos to Calabar, also known as the Coastal Line, which is part of a collection of lines from Casablanca to Douala in Cameroon, which fall under the 2043 master plan. You'd be forgiven for assuming that we have time and be lulled into a false sense of security until, of course, the deadline looms large. And you know what they say, the morning shows the day. The contract was awarded in 2014 for 4 years, but 6 years on, not one shovel has hit the ground. The problem with this, however, may be related to its procurement. Many of the problematic contracts in Africa may have issues arising from their procurement. Kenya, Uganda, Djibouti, Ethiopia, they have or be cases in point. It is instructive, of course, that a common denominator in all these contracts is China. Now, options. Can we stick to slide 6, please? Yes, that slide. Keep it there. I have shortlisted 3 options. The no change, which means we shelve any perish the thought of any AUDA intervention or agenda. It's not my null hypothesis, but I don't think that argument can be sustained in any case, because the status quo is not sustainable. The do nothing is the null position, and that suggests that we stick with the AUDA 2063 as has been scoped, and hope that all goes well. That's a 30-year program for 50,000 kilometers of railway infrastructure that will deliver by 2043, and hope that train services run on them. Given the history of sloppiness and slippages already, it's unlikely that these plans will be fulfilled by wishfulness. Final option is all change, what I've called all change, which invites us to revise our plans and try to be a bit radical. The assumption, of course, is why can't you do whatever you need to be done by year 2033, if not sooner? If we can do it in 30 years, why not 20? What about the scope? Do we need all of the 50,000 kilometers under the AUDA NEPAD agenda? Or could some of it fall under the domestic agenda of the states? Is there some re-engineering that we can do? How about the delivery approach? Can we have a more assertive AUDA NEPAD, acting in the role of client owner of the collective agreements of the states? Without prejudice to the outcome of any reviews, I'll proceed with the scopes of options 2 and 3 and make my submission on the delivery approach. The outline program is given in this slide. That's it below there. However, perhaps we can discuss the organization of the vision first. Next slide, please. This is a classic program management approach. Except it's tweaked a bit because, of course, you have a delivery organization that doesn't have a coercive instrument of hire and fire. It doesn't own the projects, it doesn't own the resources. These projects belong to the states downstream. Notwithstanding, its authority is devolved from the Council of Heads of Government, and they have vested that authority in the AUDA NEPAD. And they, of course, as a result, the authority in a program directorate. And this is something that we do as a matter of course. And NEPAD will establish a program management teams that will coordinate the delivery of the program. The programs themselves consisting of discrete projects to be performed by the individual states. The client owner, as I said, of the overall program is a Council of Heads of States, and his authority is devolved to the AUDA NEPAD with his CEO as champion to deliver the program. AUDA will establish a program directorate that will coordinate the program through program management offices.
Sorry for breaking in. We have the presentation. Brilliant
yes,
work.
we do.
Continue so that we can fast track it, so that we can take the other 2 papers. Yes, so continue, sir.
Okay. This directorate, and this is the meat of the directorate, it will be accountable to a steering committee comprising of key AUDA stakeholders. We have suggested 7 PMOs. These are program management offices downline along the RECs. These are the regional economic communities. But we may be able to rationalize this to 5 or 6. The key role of the directorate is to develop a program model and to coordinate, monitor, and evaluate performance of the projects, and feed these into the model and provide advisory on remedial action as necessary. There will also be consultative councils of transport ministers that will liaise with the steering committees to troubleshoot and to realign policy.
Can they round up?
I am. and the transport ministers who will liaise with these steering committees to troubleshoot and to realign policies, review progress, and feedback to the heads of governments in council. If we can go back to the slide 6 quickly, so I can just make a comment on the program. So in the first 12 months, we will establish the program teams, including their steering committees. Their key remit is in program assurance and stakeholder management. They will also provide technical support in capacity building and advisory to the project teams, as they do not have the power of hire and fire, and the influence is less coercive and more in persuasion. Notwithstanding their upline influence through the consultative councils and the Council of Heads of Government may offer some stake. Can we quickly, moderator, go to slide 8, and let me quickly just run through the key success factors, and these are quite important. The key success factors: clear and measurable goals, which I talked about earlier. Qualitative and quantitative objectives with the benefits managed well after the infrastructure work is complete. Cohesive delivery teams, we've also touched on, because teams work best when there are clear lines of authority and single points of management responsibility. These assure optimal performance. There are, of course, risks as well that may hinder progress, such as unforeseeables. We've got the COVID-19 rampaging. These are things that you would have to deal with as you come across. But the fundamental thing is in my last slide, and it's about the vision. And that's slide 10, please, moderator. Whatever it is that we need to do, the vision must translate right through the value chain and the supply chain. It is a very key function, otherwise everything else fails. And the depiction of what a simple solution of a tree swing and how the various people who attended to it conceived that vision and failed woefully. And so that goes to the heart of what we must do to deliver this dream and this great ambition. It is about a shared vision. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ataguba. We'll give you more time because your topic is very key. What are the way forward? What should be done differently? You suggested 3 options. We have the paper, and the secretariat has the paper, and I'll show you if you go to the leadership alongside other papers. Now, I want to call on the representative of UNECA. We're talking of financing rolling stock, very key. Please, you have the floor, Mr. Soteri Ghartey.
Thank you very much, moderator. Could you run my slide? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so humbled to have been invited and now making this presentation before you, but specifically before the infrastructure development, before the African infrastructure development champion, the man of action, Mzee wa kazi, His Excellency Raila Odinga. Please run my slide. I don't see it on my screen.
You have it. You have it. Continue.
Okay. By the way, my name is Soteri Ghartey. I'm the lead infrastructure expert at the UN Economic Commission for Africa here in Addis Ababa. But of course, I'm making this presentation from my mom's home in Kigali, Kigali suburbs. Given what is happening in Ethiopia, we have been compared to work from home wherever we are. So, ladies and gentlemen, we know that intra-African trade for Africa is the least globalized. We now stand at around 15%, where Europe is now around 67%. So this is probably the essence of the recently ratified and now to be operationalized African Continental Free Trade Area. But the African Continental Free Trade Area will probably remain a white elephant if we don't realize the intended integration in the form of connectivity. We need to be able to, we need to be in a situation where we are able to fit, goods and services from Djibouti to Dakar, from Cape Town to Cairo. And now, that is why it is important to have railway development in Africa. That is why we need to take railway, the current railway, to the next level. That is why we need to undertake railway, what I would call railway renaissance. At the moment in Africa, we have around 1.5 kilometers of railway, per 100 square kilometers of railways. Now, compare this figure with what we find in North America. Compare this figure with what we find in Europe, where they now have about 8.5 kilometers per 1,000 square kilometers. So we need railways. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not seeing my slide, so I don't know how I'm going to be moving ahead, and I don't have all my slides in my hands. In my head. So we need railways.
Sorry, the technical people will upload it now.
What is the name of your slide?
Yes, it's on now. Mr. Gotera, the UNECA slide. Hello, Mr. Gotera, you can wrap on. It will be up.
I need to know where I am, because I can't just be giving you respectable people flying statement.
Okay.
My presentation is organized, and I had submitted it a couple of days ago.
Yes, you did. We're having a bit of technical issue. It will be sorted out now. Maybe what we do, sir, is we will step you down for 1 minute. You will now resume your presentation. Just give us a few minutes. We'll step you down. Is that okay? Is that okay?
That is okay. Okay.
Okay, we'll step you down.
The slides.
Okay, I can see it now. Okay. Next slide. Yes, this is what I have just talked about. Africa, we have about 1.5 kilometers per 1,000 square kilometers of land, where in Europe, they have about 8.5 kilometers per 1,000 square kilometers. Next slide. So, ladies and gentlemen, I said this before, that the continental continental free trade area for Africa, the biggest and the most robust trade union, trade market, we remain a white elephant if we don't have connectivity in the way of railway. Now, the COVID outbreak has shown us that many of these services and goods cannot be freighted over long distances by trucks alone. Truck will not be able to shoulder the burden of freighting goods from, say, Djibouti to Dakar, or from Cape Town, to Cairo. But railway connectivity, cities connected by high-speed railway should be able to take up the burden. But as if that's not enough, our cities are being congested. You see, congested with a lot of pollution. Again, that is how the railway, the right rail in cities, like the one we find in South Africa, in Joburg, and Pretoria, comes handy. Given the list of GH, greenhouse gas emission by railway, per unit, again, railways becomes, I would say, given what I've just said, railway becomes, the Africa's transport mode of choice for the future Africa we want. Next slide. Oh la la. So it is inevitable that in order to meet the aspiration of the African Union, for the Africa we want, as well as meet the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2030, as well as the Agenda 2063, railways becomes very important. We can't depend on the city, we can't depend on roads. But ladies and gentlemen, railway investment is very expensive. We need billions of investment in railway infrastructure, and specifically investing in rolling stock. Now, that is now the reason we think that the private sector, as alluded by my sister Mesela Napo, the private sector operators have to join hands with the public sector. The private sector operators have to join hands with the government. The government, given other demanding requirements, we not be able to raise all these US billions we need for railway connectivity in Africa. Government will not be able to meet the 4x6 railway network that we are all talking about. Next slide. Now, let us look at the current financing models. We normally depend on state funds through taxation and debt. We normally depend on development aid. We normally depend on loans and grants, bilateral development bank loans from the World Bank, IMF, But however, the government resources are very limited. Debt burden can be too onerous. Some governments are actually going bankrupt. So, and many of these loans, whether from bilateral development banks or from foreign state agencies or development aid, they don't come, the way you want them to. They come with some conditionalities that hurt our economies as well as our people. Next slide. But the private sector can come in to team up with the public sector in delivering rolling stock. We all know that the railway development portfolio, at least 30% actually goes to the rolling stock. So if the private sector operators can take off the head, off the shoulder of the public sector and take off the rolling stock, related investment, that will be a good relief to government and the other related public entities. So investors can come in the form of the private sector. The investors can bring in capital either through direct equity, finance operators, procurement of rolling stock through structured secured debt or leasing, and there has to be some guarantees for the private sector to be able to team up with the public sector, because there are risks that need to be shared in between the private sector and the public sector. So skilled distribution of these sectors will create some mistrust between the public sector as well as the private sector. Next slide. Oh la la! Who is operating my slide?
Sorry for that.
Of course, the reason hitherto the private sector has been very reluctant to join the public sector is that there are some common risks that are aversive to private sector operators. So, but in the case of the Luxembourg Rail Protocol, which my sister Marcella mentioned before, some of these risky factors, risky issues have actually been contained. In no cases, there are no. Hello?
I'm on a webinar. I'll call you.
Okay, with the Luxembourg Rail Protocol, there will be national title and security registry that will be based in Luxembourg, Belgium. And again, there will be identifiers on a rolling stock asset wherever they are, around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this will be done, electronically, virtually. Limited legal infrastructure domestically and international. Again, this is being resolved by the Luxembourg Protocol that is calling member states to ratify the protocol the way the same member state have ratified the aircraft protocol. The aircraft protocol, the way it is, you see, it is based in Dublin, Ireland, and the member states who have ratified this protocol, the aircraft protocol, they don't pay for planes up front. The moment you have, the runway, the communication system, aeroplane manufacturers, aeroplane releasers, they avail the plane to you and you are good to go because your government, where you operate the aircraft business, the aviation business, have ratified the aircraft protocol. So the railway protocol we are talking about is actually an extension of the aircraft protocol. And we are calling member states in Africa to take their time as fast as possible and ratify the railway protocol in order to be able to contain all these risks that are feared by the private investors. Next slide.
Can you please round up where our time is fast-paced? Kindly round up.
Okay, 5 more minutes. Next slide, please.
Oh, no, we can't have 5. You have made a point which nobody has mentioned.
The thing is, somebody is not running my slide the way I want.
Okay, round up. Continue, sir. Round up.
Okay, forget your slides because I'm not seeing them. So, ladies and gentlemen, in order to operationalize the African continental trade area, we need to have Africa connected. We need to help the infrastructure development champion, His Excellency Raila Odinga, to have African capitals and the commercial and the production centers connected by high-speed railway network. But the government, the public sector, cannot be able to mobilize all the necessary resources into billions and trillions to see this connectivity happening. So the private sector has to come on board. And the private sector can come on board at least by taking up the burden of rolling stock. Rolling stock can be delivered through leasing mechanism, provided the operators of the rolling stock, where they are operating from, their government will have ratified the Luxembourg Rail Protocol. It's that simple. It doesn't cost much. We just have to ratify the protocol, have it signed, and then the operators, the railway operators from outside or within the country, they are good to go. And the rolling stock will be delivered, and you pay as you operate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have come to the end.
Monitored 24 hours,
Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Convey the message. Let us help Excellency Raila Odinga to mobilize member states to have this Luxembourg Rail Protocol ratified in order to cut down the burden, the financial burden of our government.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, I want to thank His Excellency, Mr. Raila Odinga, our leader and our header and leader statesman, for staying through all these presentations. And the same goes to our director, Mr. Sheikh Beda, and other leaders who have presented and who have listened to us. Now, this webinar is not a once and for all thing. Nepal has agreed that it will be monthly, so that we will be running over each of these events. You have mentioned Luxembourg Protocol. That is key. It is the vehicle to acquire rolling stock without issue of debts and all those. There are other presentations, but I've sent a message to all participants. The last speaker who must key and observe the 5-minute deadline is Mr. Yunus. Is to talk about the Maghreb situation. And let me call on Mr. Yunus. You have the floor quickly.
Hello.
You have the floor. Continue.
Hello. What for?
Mr. Yunus.
Continue.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Excellency Raila Odinga, directors and colleagues. Honor for me to be with you in this important meeting taking high-speed railway project to the next level. I will present the study of the Maghreb Trans train. The colleagues at SNCFT Tunisia have already presented the technical aspects of this study, and I will just give some additional information. The presentation will be in French. So please, next slide, please. Next. L'étude a été initiée par le Conseil ministériel des Transports qui a créé le comité, qui a donné les instructions au comité maghrébin des transports.
Please let them tune it down or shut it down.
Sorry?
Hello, Mr. Yunus, shut down the radio and the television.
Yes.
There's a radio and television around you, shut them down.
Younis, il y a un arrière-fond. S'il te plaît, tu peux arrêter la musique ou le poste derrière.
Non, j'ai pas de musique, c'est pas moi.
Ah, c'est pas toi, ok, d'accord.
Non, c'est pas, it's not me.
Okay, it's fine. It's okay now.
Yes, okay, thank you. Can you share the presentation, please?
See.
Mr. Yunus, continue.
Yes, thank you. And après le comité de pilotage, elle a été nommée par un groupe de travail technique composé des experts de 3 pays, du Maroc, de l'Algérie et la Tunisie. Et après, l'étude a été faite en concertation avec l'Union du Maghreb et la Banque africaine de développement à travers le fonds IPPF Népal.
Okay, so this guy.
Please, next slide.
This guy. And this.
Next slide, please. Yes. Le contexte de l'étude, c'est un contexte régional, continental, qui fait partie des 74 axes de corridor du train africain. Et l'un des projets pilotes, des 10 projets pilotes après les réunions à Kenya. Et ce projet permettra aussi la liaison de l'Afrique dans le futur avec l'Europe. Donc, next slide, please.
So now everybody.
Linda, next slide. Yes. Les avantages du train transmaghrébin, il va favoriser l'intégration commerciale et socio-économique, il va proposer des services modernes et la réduction du temps de parcours, et il va contribuer à l'augmentation du PIB, la création d'emplois et du tourisme. Donc l'étude a été faite sur plusieurs étapes. Au début, il y avait le rapport d'établissement, c'est un état des lieux. Après le groupement d'entreprises a fait un état des lieux de ce qui existe dans les 3 pays. Et on avait le choix entre 3 scénarios, donc le rapport 3 et après le rapport final. Pour donner l'estimation financière. Linda, next slide, please. Voilà le tracé, et avec le rouge, les tronçons objets de l'étude. Dans la partie entre l'Algérie et la Tunisie, il y avait 3 scénarios. Donc, l'étude a été faite pour trancher entre les 3 scénarios également. Next slide, please.
To Tunis, to Casablanca.
Les 3, voici la description des trois scénarios et avec deux choix. Un projet avec LGV, sans LGV et un projet avec LGV, avec les trois variantes pour chaque choix entre LGV et sans LGV. Donc, on avait 6 scénarios à choisir. Next slide, please, Linda.
Finish.
Voilà le tronçon situé dans le Maroc. C'est la modernisation et l'électrification de ce tronçon. Next slide, please, Linda.
Just to say goodbye.
Linda, next slide. Yes. Ici, c'est les trois scénarios, principalement côté Tunisie. Donc, on avait l'étude doit être faite pour choisir entre ces trois scénarios. Next slide, please, Linda. Donc, pour choisir entre ces trois scénarios, il fallait faire des critères et des notations. Donc, parmi les critères qui ont été adoptés par l'étude, c'est le critère de transport avec des sous-critères de capacité ferroviaire, le service ferroviaire et le pourcentage de volume de trafic. Après, le critère financier, l'investissement, l'exploitation, la période estimée de construction, le critère environnement, l'impact sur les sites sensibles, l'impact visuel et acoustique, l'impact hydraulique, l'impact de déplacement réseau et citoyen. Et après, le critère socio-économique, l'intégration régionale, le développement territorial et l'accessibilité aux services ferroviaires. Donc, yes, next slide, Linda, please.
Companies can advertise.
Donc, chaque critère, on a attribué un poids pour chaque critère. Donc, pour le transport, 40%, financier, 30%, l'environnement, 15%, le socio-économique, 15%. Next slide, please, Linda. Donc, l'analyse économique qui a été faite, c'est la réduction du coût de transport pour les utilisateurs voyageant par chemin et on détourne le trafic de la route, l'épargne dans les coûts de maintenance routière, les économies réalisées grâce à la réduction des émissions polluantes et l'épargne dans les accidents de la route. Tout ça a été pris en compte dans l'étude. Donc, je n'ai pas fait les détails parce que le temps ne le permet pas. Next slide, please, Linda.
Yeah.
Voici, ça c'est la matrice multicritères. Donc, les critères que j'ai cités avec tous les sous-critères et les poids attribués à chaque critère et avec les trois scénarios, donc on a obtenu un score et une notation finale pour chaque scénario. Le résultat a donné le scénario numéro 2, côté Tunisie, qui a été entre Anambra et Njenje. Donc ça, je vous ai présenté ici le résultat final de l'étude qui a été faite. Mais derrière, il y avait un grand travail qui a été fait. Next slide, please, Linda. Voilà, c'est le scénario 2. On peut passer. Next slide. Ici, c'est l'estimation du trafic et la croissance du trafic aussi a été prise en compte entre 2019 et 2025, entre 2026 et 2040 et entre 2041 et 2065 pour estimer la croissance et la demande du trafic pour le train transmaghrébin. Donc aussi pour le Maroc, l'Algérie et la Tunisie. Next slide, please, Linda. Voilà, ça, c'est, voilà, on peut passer. Ça, on donne une idée sur ce qui est actuellement le trafic actuel en 2018. On va voir les next slides. On va voir, tu peux passer, Linda, les autres slides comme ça. Linda, next slide. Yes, en 2018, ça c'est pour les marchandises. Yes, next slide. Ça, c'est pour les voyageurs. En 2018, 2018. Next slide. We show the estimation for the next year in 2065. Yes, next slide. Next. Next. Linda, next. Voilà. Yes. Et ici, c'est en 2065, les estimations et les prévisions de trafic pour le tronçon en 2065. Ça, c'est pour les voyageurs. Next slide. This is for the people.
Mr. Yunus.
Yes, next slide. Yes.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yes, I said round up now. We're against time. Just round up. Go to the last statement.
Yes, go.
We have your presentation.
Yes, I have it.
Yes, we have all the presentation. Just round up now. We're against time. Our time is off. Okay?
Okay.
You just got the link of that. This place was that.
You want that I share my screen?
Okay. Do you have the I want you to say the final words about the presentation, about the magazine, just the final statement.
Yes, Linda, you can go to the next slide and or the final. Yes, go after. Yeah, this after this an electrification. Yes, next slide, Linda. Go. Next. This is a system of electrification. Yes.
Go to the conclusion.
Go to the conclusion. Yeah. Go to the conclusion, Linda. Ceci, attends l'estimation. Avant, ça c'est important. It's an important slide for the cost. L'estimation budgétaire du projet est de à peu près 4 milliards de dollars pour la réalisation. Et si on donne le nombre des ouvrages à réaliser aussi pour les ouvrages d'art, les tunnels, les dédoublements de la route, l'électrification, je pense que c'est tout. Sorry, the time is not enough to explain all the slides, but I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Participant, our leader, His Excellency Mr. Raila Odinga, the director, Mr. Chase Beda, and other participants and speakers. We thank you for participating. We have done the impossible to have taken 8 papers within this time. We have all the papers, and this webinar is to continue. We are planning a follow-up for 20th of this month, of next month, so that there will be a feedback. We'll do a report, and those who have questions and recommendations to make are advised to send in their questions and recommendations. It will be included in the report. And the next webinar, we also take up some of the feedback. We'll pick an advanced topic also on this same line. So on behalf of the organizers, I want to thank His Excellency, Mr. Raila Odinga, our head of statesman, for taking time to stay all through, the director, Mr. Chase Beda, the speakers, the paper presenters, and our participants who are eager to talk but could not talk now. I want to call on our head of statesman, Mr. Raila Odinga, to say the last words to round up this issue. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You have the floor, sir.
I want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for creating time to have this dialogue this afternoon. I think it has been very rich, and almost everybody who made a contribution underscored the point that time is of urgency here. Time is a very major factor in the whole of this exercise. And I think this is a point that we all take home. And I think that as we move on, we are going to create a consensus so that we come out clearly and know this is the direction we want to move, because we need to move away from planning stages to getting down on the road. And we want to reach a stage where each and every head of state of the continent will know what is required of them, their responsibilities. So we need to actually task the people. We need to look at Europe at the beginning of the last century, when those major rail networks were constructed in Europe. And look at the United States, when they started constructing railways from east to west to open up that huge continent. If they were able to do it at that time with a fairly crude technology, there's no reason why Africa cannot do it at this time with modern technology. We have the manpower, we have everything that is required to do it. And I'm sure that in the name and memory of the founding fathers of African independence, we shall be able to claim this century as truly an African century. I thank you.
Very much. Thank you. Thank you. We are grateful. We meet next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lancy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I was hoping that we would address one small question. There is a project on an organization that names itself TARC, T-A-R-C. Is NEPAD part of that organization? And what is your view on that organization? Are they part of this journey that we're working as Africans? But you know, we're working on a huge infrastructure program, and it's possible that it may be hijacked by other people. I just want to find out what is NEPAD's stance on TARC.
Hello. Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Napo.
Hello. Okay. Ok, au revoir à tous.
Au revoir, madame. Au revoir à tous.
Au revoir.